next point, I did this bit of a social media campaign this whole month. I tried to put out a different awareness thing every day leading up to Trans Week of Awareness, to talk about the different aspects of transgender diverse experience, identity, how to ask questions, how to interact. And it's so wonderful to have seen so many beautiful events this week. -18, Transgender Victoria, Y Gender, all doing incredible things, and to have been asked to facilitate this panel at Out for Australia, co-produced by Origin Energy. I'm so grateful to have this space. So thank you so much, Origin. Thank you so much, Out for Australia. Before I introduce the panelists and get this discussion started, I wanted to throw it out to all of you and get a sense of how you came to be here. What's your experience? What's your way of interacting with allyship? Because as Dan said, we're all here to talk and ask questions, and there's going to be an opportunity at the end for a Q&A. But yeah, I just wanted to get a sense of what industries people are from here today. How did you find out about the event? So maybe I'll start with, who's here from Origin? Fantastic. So good to see you coming to this event to learn, to find out more. Well done. Is anyone else here from the energy sector? Anyone here from the legal sector? Law? Other corporate sectors? Yeah? Corporate? Community sector? Yeah? Health? Yeah? Education? Oh yeah? Anyone studying? What universities? Unimel?
The Australian Paramedics College.
Fantastic. La Trobe?
JMC Academy.
Fantastic. Awesome. Real spread, real diversity here today. And I won't ask anyone to disclose their identity, but I feel like we have a strong queer presence in the room as well. So I'm really hoping to pitch the discussion at a level where you feel you're included and you're also learning something. But feel free to, express yourself, join in the discussion, shout anything out if you feel like we're not covering anything. You're part of this conversation too, and I thank you all for being here. So I might get started and introduce our panelists. Is there a spare set of bios somewhere? Let me see. And where's Topher?
Yeah.
Would you be able to help me with this other mic? Because we never set that up. Thank you. Fantastic.
You know what, get my moment.
Who's having a great night so far? Who enjoyed the food?
No.
Congratulations to Topher for setting up all that food. Can we get a round of applause? How amazing was that spread? How does this?
They're not real fuckers.
Oh, they're not real. All right. So, the first person I'd love to welcome up to the stage is Anastasia. As soon as she learned how to recognize her own reflection as a young boy, Anastasia knew something was different. Upon arriving to Australia at the age of 16, the lost and scared boy navigated life through dysphoria, internalized racism, and at 25, Anastasia sprung to life. Conflict between social exclusion and inner happiness. Now you can find her voice on Joy 94.9 as a regular host, building bridges between the marginalized community and broader society. She's a human rights advocate, a diversity warrior, and a human beyond the confinement of binary. Anastasia. So Anastasia, I first met you, I believe, when I did a photo shoot with you.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, we met, and then my face was painted white, starch white. Yes, it was quite fun. It was for July. Was it? Yes, it was for July. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about your advocacy and what you hope to achieve.
You see, so I came to Australia speaking no English at first. English and French were my two main languages, and so I guess from that experience, I was kind of pushed towards, my fight against discrimination and also internalized racism because I wanted to be Caucasian so bad, with all of the bullying happening. And then, and also I came from a place where there was no references of LGBTIQ and gender diversity. So when I went to university, I got confused and got quite lost, and it played a huge toll on my mental health. And I thought I was just gay because all of the textbooks and all of the references back then was just about men, or like women and women, and there wasn't much of me around really. And so and then eventually we got to the point of gender fluidity. That was like a new term. Mainstream media kind of polished a lot. And so I thought that was where I fit. And when I graduated my bachelor degree at Deakin University, I thought I could achieve my ultimate goal, like please my parents, and got this degree in science and in athletics. And but then there was a void deep inside me, and I went out, to poof doof and. Because if you dress up, you get in for free, and apparently you get free drinks a lot, and it happened to me, and that was the first time in 25 years I actually saw myself as a whole person, and I felt complete. And during that time, of course, I struggled a lot to love my body, because I did not fit into the beauty standards in my country physically. So there was a lot of body dysphoria, and I thought, I hated my body for 25 years. And so when I came to terms with my own self, and that was the last time I became suicidal, and then I decided to transition socially. And that was when I experienced real sexism and misogyny from a lot of, especially cisgender and hetero males, and
Is it important to you for there to be representation of cultural diversity within trans advocacy?
Definitely, because first of all, it was trans women of color, trans women of cultural diversity that started the whole thing, and then and also if you think about it, and if you do more research, even in my own culture, in the ancient time, before the 50s and before the 40s, when the colonies sort of invaded our country, or took over our country, we celebrated cross-dressers and trans women, and so many cultures around the world, ancient cultures around the world, respected trans women particularly, or trans people in particular, because we were believed to be the communicator, and
And speaking of paying tribute, you mentioned to me earlier that there's something that you want to pay tribute to, considering tomorrow is Trans Day Remembrance.
Yes. I was a bit unprofessional today. I rushed out. I left my phone at home, and there was a list of people we have lost so far this year in Australia. But I would like to pay tribute to them, and I do remember their first name, and so
I think that's very important as well, to pay tribute to where we've come from and our history, and that's something that we'll be doing tomorrow at the vigil. But thank you for bringing awareness to that.
Thank you.
Next up, I would like to invite Ari to join us. And Anastasia, would you mind moving down there? Ari, come on up. Ari is a trans counsellor working in private practice as well as at Queer Space. Ari specialises in working with trans and gender diverse people and their families, providing psychotherapy, casework, consultation, training, And yeah, maybe you could start by telling us a little bit about what you do and why it's so important to you.
Yeah, I just realised that my bio is entirely just about my professional life. I'm also a non-binary person and I don't know, a person. And it became aware to me that was the case. I guess I'm used to talking in that capacity, but I'm happy to talk as a person as well. What was your question?
Why is it important to you? But also feel free to tell us about some stuff that you enjoy outside of work.
Actually, when I was thinking about allyship, I was thinking about, the importance of thinking of trans people as people that are interested in like a whole range of things, not just gender, and that aren't just, in fact, experts at gender, but also experts in a whole range of other things. Like I also do workshops occasionally on compost making, and I'm compost making. But I do spend a lot of time talking about gender because I think as a trans counsellor, and there's not that many of us in Melbourne, I think we could use this.
Yeah? Is that better? Is that
Well, I think because you're facing that way, you need a microphone away
On
from
that
you.
side.
And then talk into it as well.
Like this, talking to it like this.
Yeah.
I feel like an FBI agent.
Anyway, so there's not a lot of trans counsellors, so I tend to, even though I'm like actually happy to work with everyone and anyone, so long as it's a good kind of therapeutic fit, a lot of trans people want to work with me, and so I end up hearing like hundreds of hours of trans people's experiences in the world. And I mean, having come from the context of being in a community as well, there's a lot of conversations about allyship, and mainly just in like venting and debriefing about things that go wrong. But it's also really important to talk about how to do things right, and I really care about the concept of allyship as well in terms of myself as a white person, and trying to think about how I think in the last couple of years just became so apparent to me how little I really understand about white privilege. And so when I think about allyship, I think about all of the different intersections, and not just myself as a person whom people might be an ally to.
Yeah, I think for an event about allyship, it's great to recognise that absolutely everyone in here is an ally to communities and to communities that aren't their own. And we're here to acknowledge all of those intersections, not just about being an ally to trans and gender diverse communities, but about being allies to trans and diverse communities of colour, Indigenous trans communities, asylum-seeking trans people, and disabled trans people, and all the different intersections that exist therein and beyond, because we can all learn from each other in different ways. I have another question for you. Because you work so much in the community sector, do you, because I do that as well, do you find that it becomes a bit of an echo chamber? Like, do you feel like the work you're doing is extending beyond that?
Yes, I feel like it does extend, actually.
fantastic? Tell us more.
Because I work also with families of trans people, and so I'm having conversations with people that actually before I was working in this area I wasn't having, because I was more in an echo chamber then, whereas now I'm actually required to have conversations with people whose understanding of trans content is really important to the people that I'm working with, and who, and they're my actual clients as well. They're not just there to be the family of the trans people. So hearing about what their experience is having like a trans child or something like that, and obviously centering the experience of the trans person, but seeing them as like a whole person with a whole range of experiences, I think that's been really wonderful for me as a person. I think breaking out of my own echo chamber situation.
That sounds like a really, really great and holistic approach. And I'm really glad that someone is doing that. It sounds like you're creating really positive experiences for those people and their families.
I hope so.
We might introduce the third panelist now, Dylan. Born and raised in Adelaide, Dylan, is this working? Yeah. Dylan moved to Melbourne after travelling the world for a few months at 27. This eye-opening experience was the propulsion needed to embark on the next chapter of life. Over the last 5 years, Dylan has come to understand and share her knowledge of a lived trans experience regarding its many aspects. Dylan knows firsthand what it's like to transition in a corporate company. She sits on the Pride Committee at Origin, creating awareness and policies for diversity and inclusivity. Please welcome Dylan. is there anything you want to tell us about you, your journey, or how you're here today?
Well, I work for Origin. Yeah, I guess transitioning in the workplace has been an eye-opening experience.
Is there anything you'd like to share with us about that, understanding that it is like a very personal thing?
Yeah, I guess not knowing where to go, who to talk to, it becomes insular in some aspect, but then in some aspects when you do start to come out and share your experience, you have to have a sense of defense mechanism from the barrage of questions that come your way about surgery and about your body. You know, in my experience, I've had to use the defense mechanism of my surgery, like having it done or getting it done, so people would stop talking about it, and using that as a defense mechanism rather than people engaging in that conversation. So.
Were you kind of like the first experience a lot of people had with interacting with the trans community?
From my understanding, not necessarily, no, not here at Origin, but I think I was more overtly open about it.
Did you feel a pressure to educate people?
Yeah.
To talk about
Yeah,
yourself?
100%. Yeah. It makes it easier though at the same time. You kind of get to steer the narrative really at the same time.
Yeah.
Stuff
And any other thoughts you have about the corporate sector?
It's got a long way to go, but they're making the right, way forward at the same time. In my experience, there's been messy conversations, but those conversations can be cleaned up and educated over time. And that's why we've created Pride at Origin, and that's why we're creating different initiatives and different things like that, so that it's not so foreign.
I think there's been a big debate around sort of pinkwashing and lip service to those issues. How do you feel the corporate sector is doing in that area, having been sitting on one of those private committees?
Well, we're quite conscious of that word, the pink dollar. So yeah, we're very self-aware in that respect, and we won't put our name against anything that we can't deliver on, I guess. And so that's probably why it's maybe been a bit of a shock to some people. I've seen online that Origin would do something like that, but we're slowly starting to make that progress, and we don't want to be the pink dollar company. We want to do it for the right reasons. Yeah.
That's really fantastic. Please everyone give a warm round of applause to our three panelists. Share their stories, share their reflections, be open, be honest, and I ask that in this space you be respectful of that, and also be open, be honest, be forthcoming. Feel free to tell your stories when we get around to the question and answer side of things. Jump in if you do have something which directly relates to something we're talking about. Feel free to put up your hand. I'd love to hear from you. This is a dialogue between all of us. The first section of this discussion is going to be talking about allyship in everyday, in conversations, in interactions, in the workplace, in the break room. What does allyship look like on a day-to-day basis? Anastasia, what do you think allyship looks like on a day-to-day basis?
So to me, it means that you vote for the right parties. You vote for the people who support human rights and support trans and gender diverse people. You vote for the parties who actually want to have a future for mankind, not ones that just themselves. And also to have a very gender neutral conversation from time to time. I think that's very important.
What does that mean?
Not saying pink is such a girly color, or like that is such a feminine.
Make assumptions.
Don't make assumptions, and don't. I mean, these are objects. They don't have gender on them. They have the colors on them only, and it's us that we should start to remove all of those way of thinking, and and also we are going through a very tough journey like we learn about our new life as we go along the way, and so there would be so many mistakes. And personally, I made those mistakes myself, because of estrogen. I can be quite snappy. I can be very moody, and I can eat a lot when I shouldn't. So, and so it's just understand that we are going through all these changes physically, physiologically, and mentally too. And so just please allow us to make a mistake. Perhaps just listen to us and don't just like show empathy rather than just sympathy. I think empathy would be the key. So yeah.
Thank you, Anastasia. Dylan, what are your thoughts around gendered language, and what have you seen in your area around people making assumptions or using gendered language, and how would you like those interactions to go?
Yes, it can. I don't want to get too PC on things though at the same time. So I think over time, as we evolve, it will slowly start to change. If we just be conscious and let people know that they can say certain words like "hi guys," like entering a room, or like that kind of gendered language. But I think over time, education will be the way that we do things. I don't think we need to be fully PC on every single aspect, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean?
Like give people a chance to learn and adapt and change.
Yeah, it's an evolution, it's a growing period,
That's a really good point. And about changing, that includes making mistakes. And Ari, how should people react when they make a mistake?
I think we were talking about
The idea of the perfect ally. Still working?
I think it just cut out.
there it is. I think that idea that an ally is a person can be an ally, leads itself to people feeling like they have to be a perfect ally in order to be a good person. And actually, that means that when they make a mistake, which is inevitable because the position of being an ally means you inevitably don't know the whole experience of whoever you're being an ally for, then becomes like a personal, stressful identity crisis, which then means that the person you're trying to support has to support you through that, or say it's okay, when actually maybe what happened wasn't feeling okay.
Could you give an example of something like that happening?
So, yes, I'm sure I can. I'm thinking of, for instance, the very classic example of being misgendered. So if someone, people get misgendered all the time, but I think having pronouns which people like to say is a plural pronoun, sometimes people can find it really hard to switch into that.
What are your pronouns?
They, them. They, them, their, themselves.
Yeah.
So when that happens, a lot of the time, especially people who feel like they're an ally and have an attachment to that identity, get really stressed out, especially if I point out to them that they've made an error. And often that can mean that they actually are very dismissive and want to kind of say that, oh, I didn't mean it, or something, as if that is the point. And so sometimes it can be good for people. I mean, I think it's good to move on if that happens quite quickly, but at the same time, it's good to also recognize that you can have all of the best intentions in the world and still cause harm to someone. And even as a counsellor, I have to know that just because I'm in the helping profession doesn't mean that I'm not liable to sometimes actually hurt someone if I make a mistake. And I will, and I'm sure I have. And so, people knowing that they're going to fuck up, excuse my language, and just being ready for that to happen and actually looking for feedback and being grateful for feedback.
Do either of you have anything to add about feedback or about taking feedback?
I guess, as long as, because we do pick up on emotional cue and responses quite well through the tone and the facial expression. So as long as you make a mistake, it's okay. Like the trans and gender diverse person in front of you wouldn't really, jump out and tear you apart.
I think the online world can be quite harsh as well.
Yeah, and for me, I guess again, we all make mistakes, and for us transgender diverse people, it took us a long time to transition into ourselves, and we also allow our allies to transition with us by having patience with them too.
Should allies ask for feedback? Should allies be checking in and positively seek out that sort of?
Because they do have the privilege, they do have a lot more privileges to it, so that they can extend to. A lot of the time, because as a community, trans and gender diverse people, we are quite traumatized, honestly, and we are scared. We have been abused systematically, and we don't trust people around us. We trust ourselves, and sometimes we don't even trust our own mental health. So, when you're in a higher privileged position, then perhaps please extend it and give some feedback by actively seeking feedback and actively help.
Dylan, I'm wondering what's an example of a positive experience you've had with an ally? When have you felt like you had an ally, and what did that look like?
I've had a few. One is, I'm a name dropper, Topher. So I'm fortunate, obviously, to work alongside Topher. Topher is the embodiment of an ally. He did all of this. So his any time that there is a dialogue or any kind of piece on trans or gender diverse issues or anything that brings up, he will always create space to allow the conversation to be had from my own experience and any other trans or gender diverse people here at Origin. Yeah.
That's a really interesting point about creating space and about stepping aside
Yes.
to let other people
Yes.
step into that space.
Yeah, you can't give experience when you haven't gone through it, like creating that platform or that, lifting those people up alongside you. Yeah.
That's a really great segue into the second part of this discussion, which is being a proactive ally. But before we get into that, I just thought I'd check in with everyone. How's everyone tracking? Feeling good? If at any point the conversation becomes too intense, or you want a break, feel free to just step out of the room, go to the bathroom, just get up, just take care of yourself. So being a proactive ally, that's talking about taking the next step. So not just interacting with people, not just being a good ally in conversation, not just saying the right things. That's actually going out there and taking steps to help trans and gender diverse people, for example, improve their social situations, help other parts of the community, other sectors who don't have the same privileges, get access to these parts of society. So maybe, Ari, what are some things that come to your mind about a proactive ally?
I think someone who makes it their business. So, they're often we fight our own battles, and if they're not our battles, we don't fight them. But there is and obviously we can't fight every battle necessarily, but it's really wonderful when people make it their business to go beyond just being the bare respectful, showing the bare respect. An example is the other day, and maybe this is a minor example, but it meant a lot to me. My father, who wasn't initially perfect, but my cousin's right there and she's laughing. Sorry. Spent a lot of time and conversations, and now I would say more or less he's quite good. The other day he sent me an email saying, is it an ally thing, because he saw that I was doing this event, is it an ally thing to have your pronouns on your signature? And he, in the email I can see that he's put pronouns on his signature, but down below underneath the address. And I didn't say anything about that, but I said, that's really is perfect, and you might want to take away the word preferred, because just personally, I think they're not preferred, they're just my pronouns. So, and he did that, and then sent me an email back, and he'd moved it up to right underneath his name. And he is a psychologist. Apple doesn't fall far from a tree. And so he's sending emails to totally countless people. He has, I think, one trans client, but mainly is seeing people in the mainstream. And so he was
he was doing that and understanding that by doing that he's going to be having countless conversations with people about why on earth he's stating his pronouns in his signature, and so I think that's like him volunteering to do that labour is what is so meaningful.
So stepping out there and doing the emotional labour that is being currently carried by trans and diverse people to spread around this education about pronouns, to normalize pronouns, going out there and actually educating your communities about pronouns and making pronouns part of introductions is just one example of being a proactive ally.
Because frankly, I'm tired of doing it all the time.
Yeah, I hear that.
Except for when I'm being paid, which is...
Dylan, what are some, that's not going to do anything. Yeah, share with us. Allies can also help us achieve social change. What are some structural changes you think allies can do?
Well, apart from empathy and solidarity and passion, all those things, I think become somewhat educated yourself. Seek out those things that you do want to support and how you can engage in those communities and reach out.
Just like share the articles.
Yeah, share the article.
Tell your friends to like Facebook pages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nice news no one can hear. Maybe people could move in.
Yeah. Come sit up front.
I'm a client speaker.
My mic is, but no one else's. Just pass it. Okay.
He accidentally turned the opposite to the mic.
That one? Yeah. How can allies help us advocate for social change without advocating for us? If that makes sense.
Creating the space. I think that is a really good takeaway from it is, when you see an opportunity to create space for an experience that you might not necessarily have, and you know someone that does, then give them that platform.
Have you experienced any examples?
Yes. My good friend Kindred Surprise is a prime example over there, being a true ally.
Also, amazing outfit.
Yeah.
We have a round of applause for this outfit.
Yeah, so Kindred is a drag artist who has created a group called Homo Sapien, and it's a human rights movement, and that has created a platform, not necessarily for the experiences that they've had, but for shared experiences from Indigenous culture to refugees, Muslim rights, trans rights, and all those different things. So yeah, that's ally.
When you have access to resources, bringing people up,
Bring them up.
and stepping aside to let other people take the spotlight.
Yeah, and we had the opportunity to march at Mardi Gras in a peaceful protest this year, supporting those minorities. Yeah.
We have a question. Shout it out loud.
I'll yell like this. So, if we work for a company, I don't know what I meant. If we work for a company that has a relatively low budgetary aspect to be able to do things in this space, what we've found is that trying to create a space and invite somebody to come and speak on behalf of the community usually has come across as a cost to our business to make, so usually for an organisation or something like that. Is there some kind of, network that we could access to be able to get that space filled with people from the community to come and speak, maybe at not at cost? Sounds silly to say, but
So wanting to support the community without necessarily having the budget.
yeah, well, if the business can't pay for it, but we want to do it outside of pulling from our own pockets, which isn't always possible in people's personal situations. Is there a network that we could leverage from to be able to invite people to come and speak and create more space?
No. To be honest, I think paying people to share their experiences that they've struggled through to get to a place where they can speak about to anyone who is an ally, you should be paying them for their time. because it's not just their time in that hour, it's the time of their life that they've spent years and years and years not just living their life because they're busy educating people and trying to come to terms with themselves. And many trans people are, in terms of financial security, years behind cis people because they have so much more to deal with and they don't always have family supports to help them through that. So I feel like emotional and say about that, and there's no, I could butter it or I could cushion it, but I think it's like for the sake of this forum, best to be straightforward.
But that's just one way of being in LA, is to create events and create platforms for people to speak. There are lots of other ways to support like transgender diverse people or other people from experiencing social disadvantage, like that doesn't cost any money. Like you can have resources around your office spaces. I think the Zoe Bell Gender Clinic just released an amazing set of trans posters, which I had those in my workplace, and they just make me feel so glad to be there, so positive. Has anyone else seen those? The I'm so glad I'm trans posters, or like I'm glad to be trans, or gender diversity is welcome here. Those are the really beautiful posters that you can get up for your office, and they're just like a visual, but even just filling your workplace with things like that makes it feel like a warmer space. Can you two think of any other things for workplaces to do that don't cost money?
I guess you can always again, just provide spaces for trans and gender diverse individuals to gather together and to network. Because again, we do scatter around regions and we may not have a safe space to actually meet with each other and, just network and so provide the resources for them. And perhaps start with your HR for remove the gender marker on there. And, those kind of things kind of help a lot in the long term. And perhaps by again actively seek out to immerse yourself in the trans and gender diverse community, actively hang out with them, make friends with them, and listen to their story. And that's it. And honestly, even just like a night or like a monthly meeting of story sharing, grieving together, and celebrate our transition together is a beautiful thing and costs you almost nothing. And they do bring people together.
So I think discussing within your organizations how you can support intersectionality in your workplace. We're not here to brainstorm for each organization, but you can do that as well. Got a question?
Yeah. Sorry. Hi, I'm Amy. Just a point of interest is that two industries you didn't mention are common.
Oh, cool. Which ones?
Design. I'm an architect. Team leader and big company just down the road. I'm also one of the Bush Rangers, which is the first LGBTQ basketball club in Melbourne. Pretty cool initiative because basically trying to get people to come out and sport in a very doing environment otherwise. But I had the question was about workplace on that topic. Specifically for both of those interest points, I wanted to know, in your experiences as people in the workplace, whether you have any inclusion officers that you've seen also have a role, and if you do, what that looks like and what you can use it for.
Just to be clear, I don't work for corporates, but I do work with them sometimes, or like different organizations sometimes. And through my community work, I've met all these inclusion officers, and a lot of them, they're a liaison officer who provides, hot tips and hotlines to different services, specifically for transgender diverse people. They also organize training or your presentation for companies to actually train the staff and raise awareness around transgender diverse issues. And I feel like companies should start getting more of those roles in their team, because it helps a lot, because it's not just trans inclusion, it's also just diversity inclusion, you know? Cultural diversity is a very important thing, because we live we are all part of intersectionalities, really. Trans people exist from different skin color to cultural background. So.
Dylan, what is the role of your pride network in shaping and changing origin?
Yeah.
Sweeping
Oh,
Is that what
So the question was, Dylan, how have you seen the Pride Committee at Origin shape trans inclusion at your workplace?
I guess we're right on the cusp of this space. We're in the works of creating LGBTIQA plus awareness, or gender diverse awareness. So we're seeking some outside support to help us with that, and that will slowly come. We're also in the process of looking at gender diverse reference guides and toolkits and potential lit components and all those different things that kind of go with that. So we're right on the cusp, I think, of formulating that into a policy.
And is someone leading that? Is it a collective decision? Do you have someone who's actively researching those issues and bringing them to the table? How do you get those ideas?
Me. No, it's not just me. Yes, so we did market research on our own employees that we have here. We've used market research outside of Origin and other corporate spaces, in educational spaces, to find what the market was and what's happening out there. And there's not a lot in Australia, and it's hard to reference for sure. Myself, Topher, and Lily from our People and Culture and Diversity Inclusion space, we've been working together for months trying to formulate documentation and policies and what we want to shape and how what we want to present to Origin to facilitate someone who will transition, or wants to transition, or needs.
Ari, have you ever experienced an LGBTI inclusion role or seen it done anywhere? Just so we can give more of an answer to this question.
It's tricky because I work in queer space as well as for myself, and queer space is queer space. So it's like, doesn't need an inclusion officer. Everyone is kind of helping each other on that. I guess, I think if you can't just, I don't know, actually this is trickier than I imagined. Even within queer space, which is entirely queer staff inside Drummond Street Services, people are not getting it right. So if you have an inclusion officer, even though that sounds great, I think it's better to just try to foster a culture that is more pro-queer, not just queer friendly, but like pro-queer. And I can think of like countless times where, despite working in queer space, there's been things that happen that I wish didn't happen, and that's around like being non-binary as opposed to this is going so well. Being non-binary as opposed to being a binary trans person. There's like so many, it's infinite ways to be trans, and people's experiences of that is so diverse. So even if you had an inclusion officer thinking about who that is and making sure that they don't feel like they have all the answers and are also trying to be an ally in the sense of holding their own, not knowing.
I think that's a really great point, and it's a very effective transition into our third part of the discussion, which is allyship over time. And I think what you've identified there is that there's constantly changing culture, there's constantly changing language. People are experiencing lots of different ways of having a relationship with gender, culture, identity, and the terms that we use and how we refer to each other isn't always going to be the same from now till tomorrow till next week, 10 years from now. So how can allies have a relationship with allyship as a lifestyle choice, as a pathway into the future, as a connection with others over time. Like you told us before, there's no such thing as a perfect ally. You can never say, okay, yes, I'm an ally, tick, I can move on with my life. It's a constant dialogue with yourself and with others. What are your thoughts about how people can navigate that? Just like straight into the deep end.
Is that good? Working? I think just humility and respect. And it sounds really vague, but there's so many things I could say, and it all comes down to those things. Like, obviously, I'm someone who is speaking on a panel, so I have some degree of like authority on these topics, and yet I'm constantly met with terms that I don't know and people's experiences that are things that I've never heard before, especially like in the youth realm. 14-year-olds with identities that I'm like, great, never heard that before, cool. And it's wonderful, and it's a good thing, and it doesn't mean that things are going too far, or that they're confused, or that they'll like grow up and realize that they're just a straight up non-binary person, or I'm hoping that it'll be unrecognizable by the time I park it.
Anything to add about allyship changing over time and how we can continue to shape and learn and grow?
So again, as I think one of the very few, culturally diverse people here. Again, I guess a continual, sort of growth in terms of allyship means just that you start seeing those who may not identify as yourself as another human being, and I think that's the goal in the future. That eventually we will start removing all these labels that we put on top of each other, and just see each other as who we are. There's no skin color, there's no hair color, there's no barrier of languages. That it's just us, a human being, and so I think there's that. And also, again, I agree with Ari is that even myself, like I've learned so many things about our own community, as well as the way the world has changed, and there are so many studies on gender research and all of that. So so I guess just be more human, and I'm actually going to be more political here. Just keep on voting for the person who cares about people, really.
So setting aside assumptions that you're bringing into a conversation, continually question your assumptions and your biases, and allowing other people to advocate for themselves, to tell you their experience, and not assume what their experience is. And we're constantly affirmed in our own beliefs by aspects of society. That is the essence of having privilege, is believing that you and your position is right, and that you can just carry on. But constantly questioning that, and questioning those privileges that you have, because other people do not have them. Do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I guess it's just be vulnerable.
I love that. Be vulnerable.
Yeah, like you're gonna make mistakes, but they're not at all. But vulnerability is courage, really, at its essence. And be courageous. Stand up for your friends. Stand up for the people that have been disenfranchised, marginalised, whichever words you want to use. But yeah, I think vulnerability is not about weakness or anything like that. It's actually truly courage and standing up for those that need support. And
I think one of the things that has made me feel most comfortable in the space and most comfortable to express myself is when I've seen other people express themselves and put their identities on their sleeve and come to work as their true self and share their stories and be vulnerable.
like, show me your vulnerability and I'll show you mine.
I was just going to add that it's not just trans people who get to play with gender, and actually one way to be an ally is just to figure out what your own relationship to your gender is, and think about the ways that you've been coerced into your gender role, and fuck it.
Like, because you're just gonna set other people free by doing that. You know, if you're a man who actually likes wearing earrings and lipstick, wear earrings and lipstick doesn't mean that you don't have to be a man. Or maybe it does, and great. But whatever it means, and there's so much scope for, actually there's so much oppression of women, don't get me wrong, but there's more scope for women to be masculine, because masculinity is seen as this thing that's superior to femininity, and there's so little room for men to be feminine. And actually, transphobia is so also about misogyny, and so just thinking about sexism and thinking about gender and thinking about yourself in your relationship to that, and perhaps think about why some trans people make you feel uncomfortable, because there's no doubt that they do, and that's okay. That's because gender is so oppressive and seriously murderous. So be angry with it.
That's actually a very appropriate note to wrap up this panel. I completely agree. Go out, challenge yourselves, question yourselves, rethink things, continue to seek out, learn, and re-educate yourself and others. Stand up for people, stand up for yourself, express yourself. Thank you all for coming and listening. Just a reminder about who we had on the panel. Do you want to just go around once again, say your name and pronouns?
So, Anastasia, she, her.
Dylan, she, her.
Teddy, he and they.
Ari, they, them.
Please thank God.
Thank you so much, Teddy, for moderating such an amazing panel. Ari, Dylan, Anastasia, we would like to say thank you so much on behalf of Out for Australia for being so vulnerable with us. I'm a Brené Brown fan also, so there is power in vulnerability, and we love that. I would like to thank Topher for being such an amazing partner for us, and Jen from coming all the way from Sydney for the event. Big thank you to Chelsea, who is our event lead. I'm taking all the credit because she doesn't want to hold a microphone. But she has done an amazing job. I would like to tell you a little bit about Out for Australia. So we are all about creating safe spaces and being the change that you want to see in corporate spaces and for students as well. So we provide a mentoring program for students and queer people who might need a little more guidance in their workplace, or if they're making career changes. So you can come and see any of the volunteers with the rainbow lanyards on. Not me, I forgot mine because I'm a bad deputy director. But they can talk to you about the mentoring program. I have a mentor and he has been so invaluable to me. So come and have a chat to us. We do have another event on the 2nd of December, which is Careers for Creative Queers, which will be at Hares and Hyenas, which is very exciting, and we're partnering with Queertown for that. And you will find us tomorrow at the Trans Day Remembrance Vigil, so please come and say hi. We would love to chat to you some more, but in the meantime, please network, make some friends.
Can I just talk about the event tomorrow?
Yes, of course you can.
Yeah, this is my event, Trans Day Remembrance. That's also my photo. I'm very proud of everyone that's joined me to help create this event. Trans Day Remembrance is an annual international observance of the violence committed against trans and gender people worldwide. And this is a vigil to commemorate, hold space for that, and allow people to feel and be in the moment for that. So it's quite a challenging, difficult event, but it's open to everyone, and please do feel free to come along, join in, be part of that space, participate in that space, and lend an ear to trans and diverse people who would like to express themselves and be surrounded by warmth and welcoming people tomorrow. So yeah, please feel free to come along.
So please get up, have some more food, network, make some new friends. That's what it's all about.